Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and we went over the 5 reasons why Pioneer players are moving to Pioneer over Modern, and we just looked at the 5 reasons why Modern players are sticking to Modern, not moving to Pioneer. And now I would like to give my thoughts on the matter. I would like to give some ideas and some concerns for the Pioneer format, and also, the dynamics, what makes Modern more enjoyable, what makes Pioneer more enjoyable, and we'll see if that can actually hold in the long run. I do believe that both formats are going to stick around in the long run, but I'd like to also talk about some underlying dynamics behind some of the concerns and opinions that we've had from the community. So let's start off with the power level. Modern, super powerful format, powerful cards. And, basically people are getting their ass kicked by those cards, but is that the full story? So one thing that I like to look at is the experience level of players. Modern is an experience-based format. And what that means is people can accumulate a lot of knowledge about their deck and gain experience against other people's decks. So new players moving into the Modern format are heavily outclassed by experience and knowledge. So not only is the power level of the cards weighing down on their win rate, but also the experience level is weighing down on their win rate. You don't get that in formats like Pioneer at the moment and Standard. In formats like those, everyone's experience level is very, very low, very, very shallow. In Standard, for example, decks shake up all the time, things rotate, and new archetypes just completely wipe out and replace old archetypes. And when you try to learn a new deck, you're at level 0, your opponents are at level 0. And it affects your win rate. It significantly affects your win rate. You're going to win a lot more often because both you and your opponent are on the same level of experience. Not so in Modern. So in Modern, if you're a new player going into Modern, let's say you pick up Grixis Death Shadow and you're up against Tron. Well, that Tron player has played against your Grixis Death Shadow deck a million times for years. So when they're put to any critical decision, they know exactly what to do. They know what to do before you even know what you're going to do. Now this, I'm just speaking on behalf of newer players moving into Modern. But if a newer player was moving into Pioneer, everyone's at level 0 right now. No one's mastered their deck. No one, and they're not up against any opponent who's mastered their deck. Everyone is on a level playing field when it comes to experience. And that for sure is going to make Pioneer more enjoyable because everyone's win rate is going to be higher than usual. No one's accumulated that sort of master level experience to get a really high win rate. So in Pioneer, it's a new playground, new stuff, but while there is a significant amount of power in Modern increasing people's win rates, but there's also, I think, a level of experience in Modern which might be a barrier to people. Like if you're going into Modern, you gotta be in there for the long run. You really do. You just can't go in, play for a month and say, okay, screw this, I'm gonna go somewhere else. I mean, if that's how you want to feel about it, then you gotta move to a format like Standard. Today, Pioneer is sort of in the realm of Standard, but it's not going to be like that for forever. Eventually, they're going to cut it off with the bannings, they're going to let Pioneer do its own thing, and people are going to create established archetypes, and people are going to gain experience with their archetypes, and then new Pioneers moving into the format, they might feel like Pioneer is really powerful, or maybe too powerful, when really they could lower what I'm trying to say is people can lower the gap with experience, but you have to wait for that experience. It's only accounting for new players moving to Modern. And if you're a really seasoned Modern player and you're just sick of the power level, which of course happens, but that's why we have bannings, then of course you can just move to Pioneer. Let's move on to the concept of Modern's not an interactive format. Bullshit. Modern is an incredibly interactive format. It's got actually way more interaction than Pioneer does. Pioneer doesn't even have Path to Exile. No Lightning Bolt. That Wild Slash isn't gonna cut it against like a million different archetypes. And you sort of, I mean, even though there's only wild slash burn, like the red base decks probably have like sort of the better removal because they've got like tons of red burn spells. But right now we're seeing domination in mono green, domination in mono black, domination in mono red. Not really much going for mono white yet. They've got like poor removal. Settle the Wreckage isn't going to cut it. There's way more interaction going on in Modern. Now again, the speed is a problem, but the speed can be kept in check with bannings, and I wish Wizards would respond faster with those bannings once they see that the rate of people winning on turn 3 is going up. That's the signal to start banning stuff. Right now, Pioneer doesn't have that turn 3 problem at all, but I don't think the fact that it's a slower format, I don't think makes it a more interactive format. I just think it's just a slower format. All the interaction is in Modern, and I think some of the interaction people feel bad about, they feel cheesed out about. You know, if you build your whole deck based on 1 mana spells, and your opponent plays Chalice on 1 against you, you might feel like it's not a very interactive format. But you built a really narrow deck. You know, you tried to abuse a system. You tried to be super fast. Well, they've got the answer in Modern called Chalice of the Void. Chalice on 1 shuts your deck down, but I'm sorry, you could have built it another way. You could have diversified the curve. You opted not to. You just wanted to build it on 1 mana spells and be as fast as possible. That was your choice. And Chalice of the Void might look like this 1-card combo win condition, but really it's a pretty good piece of interaction when people who are building decks based on 1 mana spells are trying to be unfair. So it may look like a 1-card win condition, like we were talking about. People hate those 1-card win conditions, but really, are you trying to play a fair game of Magic here? Maybe not. Maybe not. You can play around Chalice of the Void. Play with more 2-drops, play with more 3-drops, play with more 4-drops. Even Burn right now is doing pretty well against Chalice of the Void with Skewer the Critics, Rift Bolt. You know, they have, I mean, not really by their choice. They're just lucky that the cards got printed. But, you know, they got the resources available to play around Chalice of the Void a lot more than they could in the past. Cards like Blood Moon, they look like 1-card win conditions, but I mean, is it really fair that you're trying to play a 4 or 5 color deck? And as it stands, it doesn't look like, you know, losing life off of Shocklands is that much of a liability when you could be comboing off. I mean, we look in Pioneer, there was the Saheeli, Rai, Felidar, Guardian combo deck with Oath of Nisa, and there were some versions playing with tons of Planeswalkers. We're talking Oko, Thief of Crowns, Teferi, Time Reveler, Saheeli, Rai, and then you got Felidar Guardian. This is a blue, white, green, red deck. It's a 4-color deck. It's a 4-color deck. What checks and balances are there for these sort of decks? Oath of Nisa is like the Arkham's Astrolabe of Modern and Legacy right now. Arkham's Astrolabe just got banned in Pauper, and now I'm hearing, you know, Legacy should all be about Arkham's Astrolabe because you have protection from Wasteland. We don't have Wasteland in Modern. But on the other hand, Arkham's Astrolabe allows you to play like 4+ colors in a deck. Is that fair? Should there not be some sort of punishment for that? So Blood Moon is in place, at least in Modern, to interact or to at least, you know, put some actual punishment on decks that are trying to go 4+ colors. 3 is like a weird middle ground. 3 seems to be fine, and they still get hit really hard by Blood Moon. But I think the 3-color decks also have a lot of room to fetch the basics that they need. What else do I want to say about interactivity? Sometimes it might not feel interactive when the Bogles player plays Leyline of Sanctity. Now you can't Inquisition of Kozilek or Liliana of the Veil edict your opponent, but they're interacting with you. Okay, you've got spells that target. Now they're playing a spell that says that you can't target them. Now you've got to destroy the enchantment. I mean, that's a portion of interaction. When the Infect player is defending their creature with Vines of the Vastwood against your removal spell, that's interaction. Sometimes these these games play out like it doesn't feel interactive, but really they are interacting with you. I mean, objectively looking at it, did they play spells to protect their creatures even when you're trying to attack them? I mean, this isn't a game about, it's not every deck should be Jund, just trade resources, cards get traded and get removed from the battlefield. You know, interaction comes in all forms, even if it comes in weird forms like Blood Moon, Chalice of the Void, Ensnaring Bridge, but they are still forms of interaction. And I am a bit concerned in the long run what Pioneer is going to look like. Like, there could be at some point these 4 and 5 color decks with no punishment, and that's what Standard looked like at a time. You know, these 4 color, 5 color collected company decks, no reason to not play as many colors as possible. And is that, I don't know, is that right? So far right now it looks like there is at least a benefit for going monocolor. Like I said, mono green Devotion, mono black, mono red are pretty prominent colors in Pioneer. We do not see an abuse of 4+ colors since the banning of Oath of Nisa, so maybe it's going to be okay. But in the long run, I don't know what it's going to look like. And another thing I want to talk about is like Chalice of the Void interacting in Modern. When things start to get really stupid in Modern, we've got Chalice of the Void to help protect it, but we don't have Chalice of the Void in Pioneer at all. Now, is that necessarily a big problem? Because, I mean, in general, when Chalice of the Void gets really popular, it just means the format's really unhealthy. I mean, the format has gone to shit. So, in theory, bannings could protect Pioneer, but really, there's always this time period before being fine and degenerate that maybe we would want Chalice of the Void until they could make the appropriate bannings necessary. So I don't think Chalice of the Void is necessarily necessary for Pioneer. However, it feels good to have it available in Modern. I don't know how to explain it. It feels nice that it's available in Modern, even though when the Wizards of the Coast makes the appropriate bannings, Chalice of the Void is not nearly as necessary as it was before. But like again, it's another card that interacts with decks that are trying to abuse 1-mana spells. Even today with Infect, you know, Infect is being held in check by Eldrazi-tron. Definitely Eldrazi-tron with Chalice of the Void in the main deck is keeping decks like Infect from taking over Modern. And we don't have I don't know what 1-mana heavy spell is going, like a spell deck, 1 CMC deck is going to take over in Pioneer, but when it does, we're going to rely heavily on Wizards of the Coast to ban something or ban a lot of cards in order to make the deck fair. Because we do not have Chalice of the Void in Pioneer. So let's finish this off with the cost of Modern, the cost of Pioneer. And you know what? Simple economics, you can't, like, you know, the price of Pioneer can't go up without taking the price of something else down from somewhere else. And turns out, so people say the cost of Modern is really expensive, Pioneer is really cheap, but as a lot of people have, you know, recognized, that imbalance is starting to reach like a medium. The cost of Modern is coming down. The cost of Pioneer is skyrocketing. And the sad thing is, people have not even bought into Pioneer yet. They're waiting for the format to settle. They're waiting for the bannings to stop on a weekly basis. They're waiting to buy into Pioneer. And you know what? We haven't even had our first GP yet. The first Magic Fest for Pioneer hasn't even started, and I'm telling you, when that happens, whatever the best decks are, those are the decks that people are going to heavily gravitate to. No one seems to care about the online resources. I don't want to say nobody cares. The price of Pioneer has already gone up by quite a bit based on those online resources. But once the first Pioneer Magic Fest GP happens, then those are the decks that people are going to be heavily moving to. So the Pioneer can still rise. I don't know exactly why Modern is falling. It could be partially because people are selling out of Modern, moving to Pioneer. A lot of people who had half decks, they had a budget version of a deck. They were still building their Modern deck, but it was still so expensive to finish off they decided, you know what, screw Modern, I'm going to sell my pieces, move to Pioneer. But also, one thing I can't ignore is that we're reaching the end of November, early December. It's Christmas time. And in general, people start selling their cards around now. Happens every single year. People sell their cards, they need Christmas money or they need holiday money. So I don't know how much of a factor that is contributing to the Modern cards being sold, legacy cards being sold. Of course, it's not affecting Pioneer. People are investing in Pioneer. Pioneer's moving up. But the point is, like, you can't play Pioneer only based on cost, because if the cost of Pioneer goes up, at some point it's going to reach a point where people are going to sell their Pioneer cards to move to Modern. Remember, people want to play Modern. They just can't afford it. That's the only difference. So if Modern goes down, Pioneer goes up. At some point, people will sell their cards, move to Modern. Same thing happened between Modern and Legacy. Fetch land prices skyrocketed. People sold them like crazy, moved to reserved list of dual lands to play Legacy. So fetch lands went up, people dumped their collection to move to Legacy. We're going to see a very similar dynamic, I think, happen with Modern. I wonder how close the prices can get, but the point is that Pioneer can't get too cheap, because if it's too expensive for Modern, they'll sell their cards, price of Modern goes down, buy Pioneer cards, Pioneer goes up. Or I guess I should start it here. Yeah, too expensive for Modern, sell Modern cards, Modern goes down, buy Pioneer cards, Pioneer goes up, and they'll be somewhere that's like respectable. Pioneer likely is going to be cheaper than Modern overall, but how much cheaper, I don't know. So a lot of the things I think they love about Pioneer are just short-term things. It's fun partially because people are winning more, because everyone is inexperienced. People love Pioneer because it's cheaper than Modern, but I don't know if that's going to happen in the long run. People enjoy Pioneer because it is slower and it feels more interactive. I don't know if it actually is more interactive, but at the very least, the card pool is shallow enough that super busted stuff can't happen, and they don't need Blood Moon or Chalice of the Void. However, when the card pool gets very large, I don't know if that's going to be as true. These cards like Chalice of the Void and Blood Moon, they look super oppressive, but I mean, there's some really stupid things you can do in Legacy, but gets shut off by Blood Moon, and maybe it feels bad losing to that one card, but man, you built your deck in a really abused way. I like that in Pioneer there's a lot of monocolor decks. There's some incentive to play monocolor decks, but I mean, if you're going to build 3, 4, 5 color deck, I think this guy, in my opinion, there should actually be something in the way of keeping a check on those sort of decks. Look at Amulet Titan. Look at Amulet Titan in Modern. Like, basically nothing beats it except Blood Moon. And unfortunately for Modern, and fortunately for the Amulet Titan players, Blood Moon is nowhere to be seen. Blood Moon is not very well positioned right now. It beats Amulet, but it can't beat any Arkham's Astrolabe deck, like, you know, any of the Oko Urza decks. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Pioneer. Let me know, give me your feedback. What do you think about what I've said? So basically, the long story short, Pioneer, very exciting in the short run. It's going to be very exciting in the long run, but I think a lot of the things that people love about Pioneer is very short run based. In the long run, it might end up looking like Modern, and they still have some issues to deal with. Can these one mana spell decks exist in Pioneer without a Chalice of the Void to keep the format in check? And can 4 or 5 color decks exist comfortably? Are we fine with that without Blood Moons keeping them in check? Anyway, let me know in the comments section below. This has been Nikachu, Merfolk Master, talking about the differences between Modern and Pioneer.